the main piece of advice I have is start now. And this is not a clear your desk, don't have any work to do, make sure you have the time. No, I'm saying like when you're sitting in front of the TV at night, sign up, get an account, and then play with it. Do something that's fun for you. So if you have a garden and you're thinking about what you're going to plant in the fall, you can ask it all kinds of questions. Go out and take a picture of the plot and say, I'm hiring you to be my garden specialist. Make a plan for the space. You can have it come up with ideas for your kid's graduation party or work, or it's a project that you want to brainstorm. The stakes are about the same as searching for something on Google, right? Are you afraid of messing that up? We're not, because we'll just do it again. You can't break these things. So push the boundaries. That's how we're learning too. See what it can't do. That's a fun challenge.
Welcome to AI and Marketing Unpacked, where we simplify AI for impactful marketing. I'm your host, Mike Alden, here to guide you through the world of artificial intelligence and its transformative impact on marketing strategies. Each episode will break down AI concepts into manageable insights and explore practical applications that can supercharge your marketing efforts. Whether you're an experienced marketer or just starting to explore the potential of AI, this podcast will equip you with the knowledge and tools you need to succeed. So tune in and let's unlock the power of AI together. Greetings, program. Welcome back to AI and Marketing Unpacked, where I selfishly use this time to pick the brains of experts at keeping up with and integrating or layering artificial intelligence into social media content, advertising, search, and other areas of digital marketing. Oh, and you get to learn too. Subscribe to be shown how to prepare yourself and your brand for this AI revolution and come out ahead. Now, have you ever hit a roadblock during a marketing brainstorming session where ideas just seem to stall or fail to ignite that spark? Innovation? It's a common challenge for marketers, finding fresh creative solutions under tight deadlines and constant pressure. Traditional brainstorming can often feel stale and unproductive, leaving teams searching for that elusive aha moment. That's where generative AI steps in, offering a new way to invigorate and transform the creative process. Today, we're diving into how AI can revolutionize brainstorming and collaboration in marketing with Katie Richman, a leading expert in AI applications and a passionate ChatGPT 4.0 advocate. Katie brings a wealth of experience from her work at Loud Labs and her extensive background in technical program management and AI. She's here to share how AI can help overcome the common pitfalls of brainstorming, leading to more effective and innovative marketing strategies. And one of my best friends, hey, Katie, welcome to the show.
Hi, Mike. How are you doing? This is like that
Fantastic.
we had these conversations so often. It's like we might as well record one, right?
Exactly. This could have been just any one of our calls. We just happened to hit
Yeah.
record, but this
Yes.
is a little more organized and structured for those of you listening than one of Katie's and I's kind of random
Oh,
conversation.
one thing I do want to say is this sounds so disingenuous, but I don't like the expert term because I really
Yeah.
want to be able to express my point of view. And it's a point of view, right? So views expressed are my own, and so expert is just a loaded term.
It can be.
Like
It can be.
passionate hobbyist, I would say is accurate.
Passionate hobbyist. Yeah, but I also think you're selling yourself short when you put it that way, because you really are someone that I have genuinely looked up to and learned from tremendously just in the last 12 to 18 months in this space, among all the other things that we've worked on together and you've shown me. So I'd love for you to start by just sharing your journey into this world of AI and what kind of drew you to specialize in generative AI.
Yeah. So, you know, talk about non-traditional. I graduated an English major. I went into TV. So I was working in on-air creative, essentially a lot of promos way to advertise and promote between programming. Went on to work long form production on the X Games. I did that for a couple of years, summer and winter. And then social at ESPN when that was first honestly a thing that nobody cared about. I was really passionate and a proponent of showing the behind the scenes and taking advantage of what a lot of the PAs and interns were already doing, which is taking pictures and putting it up on their own social media. So that was a fun start. I was the director of social there, came out to work at Facebook. At the time, it was Facebook and managed their media partnerships developer program. So basically, all the tools, like a StreamYard, something like that,
Mhm.
all the tools that media folks were using to get social either on the air or put their content on social. I worked at developer there, not planner. And then Facebook was still Facebook, started an emerging tech business, and I really wanted to be over there. So kind of tap danced my way over there kind of during COVID, learned a ton about it's very much a Y Combinator based, or it was Y Combinator based business. But yeah, 25 startups, 25 founders, Facebook kind of funding, and then giving people a lot of room to test, iterate, and develop apps. Learned a ton. Left. I'd been there 8 years. So I'm blanking on the years these days. But a couple of years ago, I left and to focus on my startup, which is Loud Labs. And it's my passion. It's always been my passion. It's the intersection of the real world and technology. Basically, how do we put our lives first and use technology to connect with each other, improve, add information and data, and not be walking around with our devices like this? I mean, why AI? I was blown away the first time I used ChatGPT. I won't even say I wasn't an AI person back in the day. At Meta, I sat next to the team that was training large language models and robot, all kinds of crazy stuff. And a few years ago, that was AI to most of us, right? Kind of a crazy, wacky laboratory environment. And all it took was me kind of using generative AI assistant. And I was hooked. I still see a ton of potential, both in the creation of content and operationally taking care of a lot of the business side to free you up to be more creative.
Yeah, and I
I'm
know
really
you're
focused on
talking to
non-technical people and creative and the psychology of using these tools and how do we become more creative or connect more, work together more. I'm definitely a tech optimist. So that's where my opinion comes in.
yeah, and I know you're talking to generative AI, to ChatGPT specifically, every single day, in ways that continue to surprise and even impress me. The ideas that you have for how to use it, and we're going to talk about those in a little bit. But OpenAI just released within a couple of weeks, I think, of us recording this episode,
Mhm.
ChatGPT 4.0. And I
Mhm.
love your take on why that's such a significant upgrade from 3.5. I mean, any other software we're using, they go from 3.5 to 4. We're like, oh,
I
okay,
think
maybe
I'm the
they
only
cleared out
one.
some bugs.
I'm looking around and what I'm hearing, at least from the tech media side, is, we thought it was going to be a bigger deal. I think you're missing the point. So, 4.0, first of all, I mean, the most important thing is that it can take contextual details from one chat thread to another. The bottom line, that's it. So, and for people that are just starting to use ChatGPT 4, each conversation you have, think of it like a text thread, is a discrete conversation. The next time you have a conversation, you're baselining at that genius, but very uninformed level, and you have to reinvest in the details. And they provided this custom instruction, good to a point. I found the nuance wasn't great with that. So with GPT 4.0, it may seem it's still a chat bot on the front end, but for the fact that it can recall and understand nuance between conversations changes everything to me because that's the way our brains work, right? If you think about it, we have discrete conversations all day, but they're all informed by the other conversations we have, who we are, our experiences. And then you are having the same thing, Mike, right? Throughout your day. And together, that's that's where creativity happens, right? Because I don't know, how do I know to even research what I don't know about? So the more kind of information coming in, we get to do more with it. And so now I'm really investing in the some baddie, but almost forming a relationship with my ChatGPT. I didn't even tell you about this, but I'm going to sound like a wacko. I don't care. With 4.0, I've named it. I'm considering it like instead of a whole bunch of chat, I'm thinking of it as an AI mine. I don't know if that's how you're approaching it, but it's a reframing. But it does have to do with some of what we talked about last year with brainstorming and acting like ChatGPT is a person. It's not, but having a conversation not in a non-Boolean way, right? In a human way. And
And this
forgetting a
is
lot of
why
what we used to do.
Yeah, and this is why these conversations are so important because you and I had extensive conversations on how to use AI just 12 months prior to this conversation we're having today. And at that
Wow,
time,
wow.
we were talking about a lot of the same principles, using AI like an intern, like an assistant who knows a
Yeah,
lot about
yeah,
general stuff, but needs to know who you are in the context and that sort of thing. But we also talked a lot about using very distinct and separate chats and about having those chats for different kinds of purposes. So you'd have one assistant
mhm,
that's doing one thing, and then this other chat is a
right.
different assistant
Because they were
who helps
almost
you in
different
a different
people.
area.
Yeah,
We were treating them like separate people, but now we can
yeah,
treat the AI like it is an actual real
right.
person
Yeah.
sitting next to us, learning about all the different things that we're
And it's
working on.
learning as well. So it doesn't
Yeah.
know you at all. Just it's really like as if you had a new colleague, say a junior colleague, and in order for them to optimize what they're doing, like I rolled through my whole background. That's worth the time now to go deeper, right? Do a series of evenings where you're like, let's talk about the first job I ever had and spend 20 minutes on that. You can still have your discrete conversations, but those become more like topics, right? Remember the time we talked about when I worked at MTV? Those investments all deepen the relationship that you have and then make the genius is ChatGPT more helpful to you, honestly.
Now, there's still a context window, correct? About how far
Mhm.
back GPT will remember that conversation. Isn't that true?
I don't know. I want to fact. I'm going to dig up facts on that because I don't want to say the wrong thing. Then I'm sure there is someone going to chime in and they should tell it. So I don't want to say the wrong thing. What I'll say is that has not gotten in my way in the months I've been using it. So far, it's really only been a month. Maybe there is. We're all going to go, no, after investing, hours and hours of time. But I think right now we just have to go with what we've got and assume it's only going to get. We're not going to be stepping back. I don't know. I mean, if you sit for a day and just talk with it, that's how I guess you'd figure it out.
Just for those of you listening, what I'm talking about is, and this was certainly true with the previous versions of ChatGPT and virtually all of the other, chat models that you might converse with today. There's a limited amount of memory. So if you imagine you were handing somebody, 10 pieces of paper, and then as soon as you hand them the 11th piece of paper, they drop the very first piece of paper that you handed them, and they no longer
Yeah,
have that
that's a great
information in their
analogy. Yeah.
hand.
Yeah.
And it's just a bucket that you keep filling. The more you talk to it, the more the old stuff siphons out and falls out of the AI's recollection, which
That's what I'm
means
gonna
for
do.
lengthy
I'm gonna ask.
conversations, go ahead and ask it while I'm talking. But yeah,
Yeah.
things that we would have to do is remind ChatGPT, hey, don't forget, this is who I am. I'm Mike Calton. I'm with Agorapulse. I also have the social media hat and I'm a podcaster because that's stuff I might have started the conversation with a month ago. But as the topics continued and as ChatGPT creates content for you, whether it's answers a question or actual copy, it's using up a lot of that memory space. So what are we finding? Does ChatGPT 4.0 have a memory or a context limit?
Okay, so it says it does have a context window, and I'm like, okay, go on. And then I said, so will you basically what we want to get to? And I'm assuming our audience is non-engineers, right? So we're not deep learning
No,
engineers,
we're
not
talking to
PR,
marketers,
God
social
bless.
media
Yeah.
managers. Yeah.
So really the point is, will you forget what I told you, right? How much do I want to invest my time? If I knew that we were going to only have this one conversation and never meet again, I might not get into the details of why I'm doing what I'm doing and all of this. What it said is, no, I won't forget the details of our conversations. I can remember important information from past interactions and use it to provide personalized responses. Yeah. And then I said, what is the window? Oh, yeah, it doesn't know. It's trying to teach me about context windows now. So it sounds like if it is, it probably doesn't apply to those of us that are getting our feet wet and starting here. It sounds like the tech is ahead of us. So
Yeah.
I would say comment and let us know if you've hit Windows with 4.0 or been
Yeah.
involved with 4.0.
And the reality is within 12 months, this will probably
Yeah,
be a moot conversation because
that's
the
right.
hardware is improving. We just saw NVIDIA's keynote where, Jensen was on stage showing off, how much they're increasing the size of the chips and the die. And
Oh,
that's just one example of how much hardware is doubling in capacity, both power and size. And that's going to be powering everything. So yeah, in a very short amount of time.
I'm fascinated by the hockey stick of the tech iteration that we see. And I know it's a compounding interest, but what I don't think we account for is the rate of change of compounding. So not only is it like, let's say that today it gave me, 2 bits, and next time it gives me 4, right? And next time 8, and then next time 4. But what we're not accounting for is that the and next period is shortening and shortening. So it's
Yes.
not just spiking in what it can provide, it's spiking in the amount of time it takes to get to the next level, or reducing by half, by half, by half, by half. So this is why people are not able to predict where we will be in 6 months. It's almost frightening because you look at these people, they spent their whole life, right, working on these models and aren't able to tell us when we're going to hit sort of these thresholds. Don't know. I mean, that's what makes it fascinating. Different people find that, my husband and I approach things differently. Like, he finds it terrifying,
Right.
but it is what it is, regardless of what we think of it,
Yeah, yeah. Early predictions would have said we would achieve, AGI, artificial general
Mhm.
intelligence by, 2030, 2032. Now most experts, and I'm using experts in quotes
Yeah.
around them, are thinking probably 2025, 2026 at the latest because of the rate of improvement in growth. So it's really fascinating.
Something too, like on Lex Friedman, where they were talking about he had a guest on who was saying, I don't think it's a great question. When are we going to get AGI? It's like, when are we going to get flying cars? That everyone's like, where are the flying cars? And he goes, we did. They're called a helicopter. So it's like boiling a frog, where there's iteration and change in our seat where we are right now. We maybe call it by another name. I can't see. So will we all go, aha, when AGI happens? And that's when basically all of these AI, not like a hive mind, kind of, right, can think and learn
Uh-huh.
together, and it becomes like one being. That sounds terrifying in a good way.
Yeah, I think Friedman's way off. I don't think comparing
Mhm.
AGI to flying cars and helicopters is accurate in the slightest bit, because flying cars aren't going to revolutionize all of our lives the day that they're approved by the FCC, because they're coming out, folks. If you haven't seen, you're gonna have flying
Mm.
taxis right now that can take you from the Bronx to JFK in like 30 minutes, right? But that's not changing my life today. It's probably not going to
Mhm.
change my life, maybe even in my lifetime. Who knows? But
It's
AGI,
like the
that will
Industrial
change everything.
Revolution. And that's what Jensen says too. I mean, he
Yeah,
says that
only it's happening faster.
AI, absolutely. And it's worth looking at that keynote from this week at
Yeah.
Computech, because he talks less about, like, the whole media is obsessed with chatbot, right? Think about it. We're talking about, all of these Gemini and all of that, ChatGPT, they're front end chatbots. What he's talking about is a factory that can internationally speak to all of the other factories, learn and optimize as one factory to make more tools to build itself, or brains for robots. They've had these, there have been robots that are just haven't hit markets because they didn't have brains. So now we have brains without bodies. So
Yeah.
it's just
Yeah.
not about chatbots. That's one part of it, but that's not where we're going. Holy shit! I don't think we know yet, but we don't. We just know it's
No.
going to be big.
Yeah. We're talking about, autonomy. But for those of you listening, now you know how much I love Katie and why I love having these conversations with her, because
Way off
it's
track.
rapid
I'm
fire.
absolutely.
It's broad, but that's also why I'm here, to keep us on track. So
Yeah,
we
do
do
that.
want to talk about brainstorming, and
Mhm.
I'd love for you to share how you're using ChatGPT 4.0 to enhance
Yeah,
that traditional brainstorming process.
absolutely. So this is something I think is a great first step, right? So brainstorming by yourself, you don't need to bring in your team or anything yet. But let's say that you have to present PowerPoint, I don't know, in a month. It's topical. You're somewhat of a subject matter expert. You're pitching something like that. You have the bones maybe of what you're going to work on, but what am I going to do with that? So that's where I really suggest, this is what I'm doing. I'm now using ChatGPT 4.0, and I've named it. I've named him Leo. That's mine. So Leo, I teach Leo a little bit every day. I have a bunch of projects brewing. I'm working on my startup. I'm building some talks and presentations. And I'll just tell him what we're going to talk about now. You provide background and source material. So anything that you can turn into a PDF can read. It can read. You can snap a shot of a wall of whiteboard and it can pull the text out of those things. So I'm constantly providing and uploading source material, background information, and context. And then it's like using your genius, 100 million times more genius than any human. So using that raw capacity and then using the source documentation I've given it. How, we'll brainstorm. What should the topic be? What's an unexpected approach, right? Doing the top 10 slides. How could I approach this differently? And that's where we can't see outside what we've done before without someone to bounce off of. That's human nature anyway. Even if it's talking out loud and that person asks a couple good questions, that pushes ideas forward. And that's kind of how creative thinking happens. So it's creative thinking with truly a consciousness that is having new ideas, but it does need background. It really doesn't know, right, until you've provided that background. And that can be a little frustrating because there's all kinds of legal issues around links. So a lot of times it doesn't want to go visit links. I don't know about you, Mike, they have the Google Drive Connect that you can do. So I've done that, but it doesn't seem to like to go in there. I think it's legalities and they're just being, towing around some things right now. But you turn everything into a PDF and then that source material. So I said to you before that I want the raw transcript from this podcast because I'm going to feed that back into Leo. So
Yeah.
Leo learns more about my point of view. Maybe teaches me awareness, things I'm not aware of.
Yeah. And I was sharing with you, I prepared for this podcast by brainstorming with my ChatGPT about what we should talk about. And the first thing I always do is I tell ChatGPT, hey, I'm going to have a new podcast coming up. And it says, with whom? And I said, Katie Richman. It says, oh, okay. Can you share with me Katie's LinkedIn? So I give it.
It doesn't like to say that it can do that because the personal data. I can.
But it can. It looks at your
Yeah, it
LinkedIn,
can.
looks
It
at
totally
everything
can.
you've published on LinkedIn, also does a search on Bing to see what you've been published on Bing and talked about online. And it
Anything
comes
that
back and
comes
says,
up in search results, correct? Basically, public data from search results about you if you've
right.
ever Googled yourself, right? I'm like,
Yeah. So it comes back and says, hey, this is Katie. And I say, yep, that's her. And it says, what do you want to talk about? And I say, well, I asked Katie what she would like to talk about. And I throw it in there.
Mhm.
And it says, cool. Here's 5 topic ideas that I'm just spitballing. You might want to talk about with Katie Richman. And sure enough, one of them was talking
Yeah.
about brainstorming,
You know
and
what
I
I
just go through that
find?
process.
Kind of like working with a human on a project. The first 5 ideas are sometimes like the most basic or obvious ones. So it's like page 1 of Google, right? You kind of, or the Wikipedia. What has been underlined the most or highlighted, hammered
Oh my
home?
gosh. Yeah.
So
Our previous guest, Andy Christina,
have to
calls
push.
AI average intelligence because everything you get
Uh,
at first is the average of what's out there on the
first.
internet.
Right. So if you've ever, there's a conversational technique that teachers use where they will talk to a student about a topic they're presenting. They do their presentation, maybe it's kind of obvious in a one-on-one class, and they'll say, what else, besides all of that, what else do you think? Or what else did you learn? And it's not until you do that a couple more times, I think, that you get to the heart of what either problem is, something you don't know. I will often ask for not obvious answers. And you have to push. So that's one of the biggest things. And I talked about this last year is it's not a search result. First, what you get back at first is like first conversation back and forth with the person. There's a lot more to say, but that first wave, maybe it's not that impressive. Sometimes. Depends how much you know. If you know a lot, it's not going to be what you want at first. It's going to be basic.
Yeah, 100%. And by the way, I should have mentioned this at the outset. When Katie and I talking about last year, I had it on a different podcast, the
Sorry.
Partnership Unpacked podcast. No, don't apologize. I should have said So I'll have a link to that
Oh,
in the
yeah.
show notes. I also have a link that I'll add in the show notes to a panel that I moderated with Katie and some other guest experts where we're talking still a lot about these same topics. But have you run across any unexpected benefits
Mm,
when you're using AI in these kinds of creative settings?
absolutely. I mean, the number one thing, this is something that with my startup, this is like my passion point. I'm not going to get the quote exactly right, but I think it's a Rumsfeld quote. 1% of the world is the things you know. 1% is the thing you don't know, right? Like I don't know deep learning engineering, but 98% of the world is comprised of the things you are unaware that you don't know. Okay. And so that to me is where the gold is here. I'm working. So if you think about it with Google, you're only going to get back what you've asked, right? And we talk about on Facebook how people get stuck in these circles where it's an echo chamber because you're asking the question that you know. So if you can have a conversation and with people, they're providing you back. Sometimes they overlap, but 10% of it might be something you had no idea. That could end up being the most important thing to you. Or you think about, I'm old. We used to buy a single, right? You'd hear something on the radio or someone would recommend it.
Not old.
Buy a single. That's like a Google search. But when you bought the album, right, for that track, and then a year later, the favorite song is track 4, which you didn't know existed, you wouldn't have bought that CD. That's what's been lost with our specialized search on the internet and the way it's operating today. That's what can come back, right? With something like this, where you're working with, like talking to a person who knows everything in the world there is to know fact-wise. But what I don't want everything in the world, but it can provide back topically things I'm not aware of, new books I haven't read, experts I haven't heard of, someone who overlaps completely with things we talk about, right? There's just no way we can keep up with all of that, and we don't even know how to search for it. We don't know it. Does that make sense, or is that too like out there?
No,
It's just
100%
the
makes sense.
source of
In fact,
creativity.
yeah, yeah. That episode I referenced earlier with Andy Christina, I'm going to link to that because y'all need to go back and listen to that. That was
Yeah,
the entire
I want that
episode.
too.
We were focused on content marketing, and the idea was identifying content gaps. And he made the point that as humans, we're really bad at identifying
Can you
what's
identify
missing.
what a content gap is for someone that's not like capital marketing? What would you call it? Like what's a content gap? An area that
It,
you
it
don't know?
it's not an area that you don't know. A content gap specifically is an area that you have not covered or covered well enough in
Okay.
your existing
Okay.
content because there's demand for that information. Just pull a silly example out of this conversation, deep learning. I don't have any content about deep learning on my
Mhm.
website, but it's come up now in this conversation. Do I need to cover deep learning? I don't know.
You
That's
wouldn't have even thought
something,
of it. Right.
right? That's something you'd have to
Right.
do an analysis of what are all the AI related terms that my target audience is searching, and have I talked about them on my website? Yes, no, maybe a little bit, and so on. Well, the AI is so powerful. Obviously, it can scan a
Mhm.
spreadsheet of all the topics that you've talked about and identify for you where you have content gaps, and it can do it like
Oh
that,
wow, that's
which we can't
really
as human beings
what
if
I'm
I'm going to
talking
do this
about.
analysis myself. Yeah. So to your point, yeah, it's just so much more powerful in
So
identifying
much more
what haven't
powerful.
we talked about it. And you can just ask it that question, right? You do this brainstorming
Yes,
question back and forth with the AI, and then you can simply say, what have we missed? What didn't we talk about?
absolutely.
What aren't we covering? And it'll say, you know what? How about these
Yeah.
5 things?
And the more you feed it your own source material, the better it gets. It's just like anything else. It's like online how your search, if you let Google know where you are, your contextual search is way better. So here's a little hack tip. I was just asking GPT 4o if there's a way to load in source material outside of right? A conversation. So like, if I really wanted to, could I take a day and teach it, take my Google Drive and just dump it in? Not that I would do that, but so that it knows everything I've ever worked on. We're just done with that part. Said no, everything is through a conversation thread right now. And I was like, well, can I have a conversation that's just me uploading all the things? And it's like, yeah, you can absolutely do that. So, and you can't do all the things you've ever done, but say in the context of brainstorming, what's everything relevant. And that might be a pitch deck from my startup, a product idea, something I worked at ESPN, a panel I was on, an expert with information. It's all the things that I know that are feeding kind of the conversation or this idea thread, and then layering in everything you don't know. And that's what really, you can still deny it and say, no, that's not, like you said about deep learning. The answer very well is, no, it's not. It's good to know though, and say, no, that's not what I want to do right now. Then have something out there you don't even know about.
We're definitely moving in the direction though, where you won't have to do anything that you just said. We've got Microsoft Copilot that's living on the PCs as part of the Windows operating system. And
You
if you turn
played
it
with
on,
that? I don't
oh
even know
no,
what
because I'm a
that.
Mac guy, so I don't even have a PC. I haven't had one in a decade, even though I used to build them. And that's why I understand chips and dice and all that sort of thing. But today, for those of you listening, right now, you could have an AI that's a resident of your computer, just like we used to have Clippy inside of Excel. Now you've got Copilot who's paying attention to everything you're doing and saying. And obviously, some people are rightfully a little concerned about that. But on the other hand,
All your
flip side,
meetings, the transcripts,
yes,
everything is
all the meetings, all the
available.
emails, all the projects you're working on, it'll
You
instantly
can
know
limit it,
all
I'm
that.
sure. You can like
Yeah,
say not this or whatever. Yeah.
yeah.
And in
So
the
let's check.
context of work, I'm assuming
That's right. Yeah,
it's a
and at
lot.
least that's how it is today. You know, it's in that context of work. But folks, we're talking with Katie Richman about using AI for brainstorming, and I've got so many more questions for this amazing lady. But before I get to those, let me share with you the tool that I'm using for brainstorming. This episode of AI and Marketing Unpacked is brought to you by Magi, your gateway to making generative AI incredibly simple and accessible. Wondering how to seamlessly integrate AI into your marketing strategy without getting bogged down by complexities? That's exactly where Magi shine. It provides user-friendly AI solutions that empower marketers just like you to innovate and elevate your campaigns without needing a degree in data science. Imagine having the power to generate creative content, insightful marketing data analysis, or even personalized customer communications, all at the touch of a button. Magi isn't just about providing tools, it's about transforming your approach to marketing with AI that's tailor-made to be straightforward and effective. So, whether you're looking to boost your content creation process or want deeper insights into your marketing performance, Magi makes it all possible with a few clicks. No fuss, no hassle, just results. Ready to simplify your AI journey? Visit Magi today to learn how their solutions can revolutionize the way you engage with your audience. Don't just market smarter with Magi. Tap the link in the show notes. So, Katie, we were just talking about how people might be a little skeptical using a product like Microsoft Copilot that lives on their system and monitors everything they're doing. What about just the generative AI part? What about what would you say to people who are skeptical of using AI to create or brainstorm?
that you're human, and I completely get it. I was at Meta before it was Meta when Cambridge Analytica happened. Okay, so I was just going to talk about this. It strikes me how wary we are on the one hand of all sharing of data. And I heard someone the other day, some tech guy say on a podcast, what are you doing with the data? So now we're all hoarding our data. We're like, my precious data. But like, what am I doing with it? Meanwhile, it makes Google contextual. So it's it's not good or bad. Is the cost of the data worth it to you, is how I look at it. We deal with this in Loud Labs a lot, which that's my startup. It's completely on the side. My co-founders and I all work in tech, but we have full-time jobs. But we're very interested in, if I provide my geolocation and a time box window to say, yes, you can know where I am, and we'll layer in, I don't know, my LinkedIn or something like that. I'm at a conference. Can we build tools that are put your real life first using tech? So like AR layers, things like that. But it doesn't work. People will not pay right with the data. It just doesn't work. So if I don't know where the location is, I can't build something that'll tell you what the name of the guy who's coming to you is, right? So it's not, I just think it's something we all should take case by case. Is it worth it? And if you think about Cambridge Analytica was a case where I think it was 2016. There used to
Yep.
be all these Facebook quizzes and things and games, but they were just like a top layer. And what they were really doing was collecting data.
Yeah.
So you do this 10-question quiz, and then you'd have to say, I agree to terms and services or something shady. And then if you dug into those terms and services, they'd be like, you give Cambridge Analytica everything about you that's on Facebook, right? Like on the graph,
Yeah.
whatever.
Who you are,
And
who you're connected to, everything.
yes, and to me, that is extremely shady. And businesses, if it's too long to read, people are not going to read it, and you know that, right? Kind of like mortgage stuff. However, it's on us as well to not just click button to get the quiz result, like that I'm an Aquarius, and here's like the magic word today. You know, it is a give and take, right? And so it reminds me of when credit card companies were predatory and went after college students when I was in college, and you'd want to get a t-shirt, so you'd sign up for a credit card. And if you haven't been taught any better, in the moment, that might seem like the right thing to do, your immediate gratification. But in the meantime, they were ruining kids' credit scores. So about pausing, taking a second and going, is this worth it to me right now? And you can change your mind every time. So that's not like a yes or no, but I think these tools have already sourced, they've crawled basically public content on the internet. So anything that shows up in Google search results, if you were logged out, it basically has been indexed. Just like Google stuff, basically. Then you are layering in right information and providing information so that we can get back some tool we want, some results we want. And that might not be worth it to you in a certain case. And in another case, it might absolutely be worth it. And it's not very clear. It's not right and wrong. This is a whole debate, right? And
Yeah.
I'm sensitive to both sides of it. I just think everything has become both sides, right and wrong, good and bad. And it's not, it's nuanced. It's a give and take, right?
It's definitely complex, and it's definitely a topic that, from a business perspective, I'm
Mhm.
encouraging the businesses I talk to have an individual or a committee who's responsible for thinking about the business use of AI, not just how they're using AI to do better at their individual jobs, but how
Yeah,
are they implementing AI? What tools are they using? Does everybody in
yeah,
the organization understand that it's an individual choice, what information to give the AI? And oh, by the way, we probably shouldn't pump proprietary information into a chat GPT. Not everybody knows that. I mean, hopefully those of you listening to my podcast understand, don't put proprietary information into the AI.
right.
But those are the kinds of conversations we need to be having as internal businesses. And we also, that third idea that I'm always,
Hmm.
is that these businesses should be thinking about, how is AI going to disrupt my industry, and how
Hmm.
preparing my business. Maybe it's not going to change my business itself, but maybe it's going to change my audience in
Can
some.
I ask you, because you're way more in this than I am, let's take an agency. Let's take a small creative agency, for example. Say that that was yours. You're the CEO of a small social agency. How do you think this is going to change what that business is all about? I mean, what do you think? I'm curious.
Yeah, well, first, this is a fantastic question. At my day job at Agorapulse, we're hosting our fourth annual agency summit on July
Oh yeah.
18th. And
Perfect.
this is the topic that Katie and several others, Jenna from Jasper, Chris Carr, who's a good friend of mine and a colleague in the AI space who owns an agency, and Kathy McPhillips from the Marketing AI Institute. We're all going to have a whole conversation specifically about how AI is impacting marketing agencies and what they can do to pivot. But to answer the question, I 100% believe every agency is going to be impacted at a very high level. You're going to have agencies who are discovering new ways to use AI to do better at their jobs, which means they're going to be
Hmm.
faster, more efficient, and better in so many other ways than agencies who aren't using AI. So at a very
Hmm.
high level, you're going to have agencies that simply get left behind, and they're no longer competitive. They're no longer able
Yeah.
to do the deep analysis as fast as what Andy and I were talking about in that previous episode. I mean, if you can do a complete content analysis of a
Oh
client's
yeah.
site that has 500
Completely.
URLs in 20 minutes versus a week, think about how fast you're able to move for that client and get past the analysis and audit phase into the strategic and implementation phase of working for them. Other agencies aren't going to be able to do that. So there's that.
Yeah.
There's other arguments and conversations about what will clients be able to do for themselves now
Right.
with
Yep.
AI that at one point the agency was doing for them, which, some
Well,
people are going to
this is
try to
like
buy.
I've worked on both sides. I worked in-house in
Yeah.
like an agency environment at Disney and ESPN where we were sourcing clients that were inside the business as well, really operating like a creative agency. And then at Facebook, I worked with especially a lot of like influencer agencies. And just because you can do something doesn't mean that you should or will, right? So Facebook, like, we knew how to work with influencers. Did we have the capacity to work with 1,000 influencers for a campaign? Constantly looking at the quality of their content, reprioritizing them. It was very data driven, recontextualizing, creating new content. I think there's a huge opportunity still because that is an area that people want, they need this work done and they don't have the capacity to do it. Even if they could do it, right? It's It's like Facebook tools. You could go in and source all your own content, schedule it, get some feedback, and maybe you do that a little bit. Or ad buy, if you've ever tried like Instagram or Facebook ad buying, it's extremely complex. It's a specialty area. And so the people that are going to win we're already experts in this area. To be clear, I'm not saying they should build any tools. This is not about tech,
Yeah.
building tech or
Yeah.
anything or product. It's about learning them so that you can, all of a sudden, your agency, which is extremely creative, has 10x right capacity without hiring more people, which will put you ahead.
Yeah. Yeah.
Not
Absolutely
that
agree.
simple, but
No, it isn't, but I appreciate that point because I'm doing more and more with influencers at Agorapulse, getting back into that role specifically and telling stories with influencers. And I need to be actively thinking, how can I use AI to do
yes,
my
you do
job
have to think of it.
better?
Yeah.
And there's going to be ways, absolutely. So I'm wondering how you see the future of AI kind of evolving when it comes to specifically the creativity and the brainstorming that we've been talking about today. Obviously, there's going to be so many areas that AI impacts. That's why I'm calling it a revolution. It's going to hit every single
Mhm.
aspect of society, from healthcare to government and
Mhm.
everything. But we're talking to marketers today. How do you see that evolving? And I'm not asking for 2 years because who knows, but I'm like in the next 2 to 6 months.
Yeah, I'm not even going to timetable it, but I will say I think this is an extremely empowering moment to be a creative. I really do. Right now, technology rules the world, right? None of us can work got websites, we have to build things, we have to work with products and front ends and services. What if you could prototype the 10 app ideas that you have without hiring a designer or a developer at all? You know, coding is something that's really frustrating to me because I love technology. I'm not an engineer. I say I know it just enough to be dangerous. Like that you can get around on the front end and I know how everything's working, like you said, Mike. But imagine if before I invest in a wonderful designer and developer combo, I can try out 10 apps in the category to see early stages what's working, then cut it down to 5, right? And then 2, you can retain the creativity and the strategy, the content strategy, which is really what people are paying for, right? So being able to look across the category, say these are the influencers that make a lot of sense. And I've started with these 100, right? And I asked ChatGPT to look at what content they created in this category would look like. And I realized only 5 are relevant, or there were an additional 10. I don't know. The things we don't know. So I think it's extremely empowering and can get us back into the seat. You get out of an operational role. That's still under your purview, but it's like hiring people for free once you invest in them, just like people.
I love that idea that, yeah, very soon we'll be able to visualize an entire campaign from start to end, including all the visual assets, creative assets that might go into that. AI is obviously going to be able to predict the success or not of that particular campaign and allow you to just look at the entire body of work before you decide to commit to it. Again, this is June
Right.
5th, 2024. When I'm recording this, we're about to do Q3 planning at Agorapulse, which means we've got to
Mhm.
imagine we've got 3 months. We've got our normal business as usual stuff that has to be accomplished. What are we going to put on top of it? What events are we going to do? What pieces
Yeah.
of content are we going to create? What
It
webinars are
should
we
all
going to
be
do?
driven by a strategy and direction. So if we have the
Yeah.
time going, our goal in the next year is to use AI tools to create 5 times as much creative content, something like that, work with more influencers. Now, what if you had a few weeks to play out those 3 or 4 different priorities for next year as I concept, brainstorm on each of
Yeah.
them, narrow it down to get deep and then be able to forecast as well as we can, right? What the financials could look like, what your data goals and KPIs should be. I just think it gives us so much more room to try. And it's going to be constantly evolving in what the tools allow us to do, how much investment and content we've put in there. And then the length of relationship is what nobody has yet. So now me and my Leo, my ChatGPT 4.0 AI, we've only been working together now for a couple months. It is night and day what it knows about me now, because I've told it one time. I'm the oldest of 3 kids. My sister's 2.5 years younger than me. And it retains that. So that is not needed every single time anymore. Huge.
Yeah. Yeah. Fascinating opportunities. And just one more question for you. I can't believe we're almost out of time, but I want
I
to
know.
know, what advice would you give
Mhm.
marketers looking to start utilizing generative AI for their creative projects specifically?
Absolutely. So I think the main piece of advice I have is you don't have to start now. And I'm talking, this is not a clear your desk, don't have any work to do, make sure you have the time. No, I'm saying, like, when you're sitting in front of the TV at night, sign up, get an account. One, you don't have to know all these tools. Don't. I recommend ChatGPT. I think it's easy to use and seems to have some of the more advanced. And then play with it. Do something that's fun for you. So if you have a garden and you're thinking about what you're going to plant in the fall, you can ask it all kinds of questions. Go out and take a picture of the plot and say, I'm hiring you to be my garden specialist. Make a plan for this space. Oh, and as you know, I live in California and it'll be the fall. I mean, it's wild. You can have it look at videos, come up with ideas for your kid's graduation party or work, or it's a project that you want to brainstorm. But I would say the stakes are really low. The stakes are about the same as searching for something on Google, right? Are you afraid of messing that up? We're not, because we'll just do it again. We can clear our cache and try again. You can't break these things. So push the boundaries. That's how we're learning too. See what it can't do. That's a fun challenge. Push it until it breaks.
But it won't break. Literally something you taught me over a year ago, because I'm the kind of guy that I want to know how things are going to work. I don't want to break things. I want to be
Wanna break it.
professional. That's why it takes me
Have
so
a
long to like
plan.
go on live TV and that kind of stuff. Yeah, I want to have a plan, and you pushed me into using Pi and ChatGPT back in the day because yeah, I had that trepidation about doing it wrong. And you really
Do it.
can't do it
Try.
wrong. You can do it less optimal today than you will tomorrow, sure, but then that's learning curve. The one thing I'll add real quick is that I tend to use ChatGPT 4.0 as well for most of my interactions. But the reason I talk about Magi, for those of you listening,
Yeah.
is
Tell me
Magi's
more.
it's that single interface to all of the different large language models. And you may find
That's
that
right.
depending on the kind of work that you're doing, Claude or Gemini might give you the kind of responses that are better suited for you than ChatGPT 4.0 or ChatGPT Turbo or the different
Is it like
versions. And so,
multimedia as well? Is it just
oh
text
yeah,
or it does
oh no.
everything?
So you can have, I use Magi to create all my imagery for my blog because I can use Dolly 3 or there's a couple other ones. I use Dolly 3 most of the time. And I can simply tell it, hey, I want a bear in human clothing wearing a fedora in a Star Wars setting, studying reports on social media analytics. And it creates that image for me. And
You
so now I've
also
got this
don't
whole
have
thing
to
going.
know. I used to talk about this with a fan. We don't know the format we want to receive back in. We don't ever say, give me advice in audio. We were just like,
Right.
what's cool today, period. That might be a video, that might be a podcast, but I don't know yet. I don't know what's good. So this opens that up, right? So that you can get back results across whatever's the optimized platform or media.
Yeah. So
Sorry,
I
I'm
pay
not,
Magi
I'm
20
totally
bucks.
saying pretty cool.
No. Yeah. So I pay Magi 20 bucks a month, and it buys me a certain amount of credits, a lot of credits to be used on whatever large language model I choose, and I can choose and change on the fly or have different chats. It's totally
Instead
up
of
to you. Very
paying like
flexible.
I pay for GPT Pro, you are getting a subscription. That's cool. It must be like a bulk license or something. That's pretty cool.
Yeah. Yeah. So he's just
All
paying
right,
my
I'm gonna
API
try.
usage. Yeah. It's a friend of mine, Dustin Stout. He created this startup. We'll probably have him on the podcast later.
I'd
I've
love
heard
to
him on
jump
other
in.
shows. Dustin's fantastic. So speaking of fantastic, Katie, you are freaking amazing. Adore you. For those who want to
Oh,
learn
thank you.
more
That's really
about
cool.
you, if we want to find you and work with you, where can they go?
Yeah, absolutely. So LinkedIn is always the best place, LinkedIn/in/ Katie Richman. So always find me there, message me. I connect with pretty much everybody there. And then I have a blog that I am due to update, but it's a Medium blog and it's at Tech Normal. So maybe we can put that in the show notes. But it's really about digesting like who the hell cares? Like all these updates we're hearing all the time. Why does a human care about this, right? And so it's coming at tech from a non-tech industry point of view without talking down like you're dumb, Well, that's the goal anyway. Taking people seriously, respecting their intelligence, and we're not all experts in technology. So what is the fast, somebody who is really busy, why do I care about what's happening?
Fantastic. Fantastic. Thank you, Katie. Thank you, all of you, for listening. That's all the time we've got for today. But don't forget to find us on Apple, the AI and Marketing Unpacked podcast, and leave us a review. We'd love to know what you think. Till next time, welcome to the grid. Thanks for joining us on AI and Marketing Unpacked. I hope today's episode has inspired you and given you actionable insights to integrate AI into your marketing strategies. If you enjoyed the show, please subscribe on your favorite podcast platform and consider leaving a review. We'd love to hear your thoughts and answer any questions you might have. Don't forget to join us next time as we continue to simplify AI and help you make a real impact in your marketing efforts. Until then, keep innovating and see just how far AI can take your marketing. Thank you for listening and have a fantastic day.